The Eiger is a looming 3,867 meter peak located in the Bernese Alps in western Switzerland. Eiger has a rather unique pyramidal shape, with its slopes consisting of three large distinct faces. Due to its location in the Alps, which is widely considered to be the birthplace of the sport of mountaineering, and its intimidating appearance, the Eiger, of course, would soon become a highly sought-after first ascent of early alpine mountaineering, and the first ascent of the peak was successfully completed in the year 1858 by three men, an Irishman named Charles Barrington, along with two Swiss guides that accompanied him named Christian Almer and Peter Bohren. The historic first ascent had been accomplished by way of ascending the western wall of the peak, which is, as is most common with first ascent routes, the easiest and most straightforward face of the peak to ascend. Following the first ascent of Eiger in 1858, with the mountain now conquered, more ambitious mountaineers would largely overlook the mountain's eastern face, which consists of a sheer, largely iceless rocky ridge known as Mittelegi, which emerges from the craggy crevasses of the glacier below it, which is known as Ishmir, which means ice sea in German. The unpredictable nature of the constantly shifting glacier and the horrible, often slow and painful deaths awaiting potential climbers within the depths of the slough of deep crevasses lining the glacier made it an understandably undesirable face for summit hopefuls to ascend. Instead, most mountaineers would set their sights on the ominous, near-vertical wall of rock and ice that is the Eiger's northern face, which is known locally as Nordwand, German for North Wall. Nordwand looms menacingly above the lush valleys below it, rising 3,000 meters from its base to the summit, and it also sports a sheer vertical section that stretches for 1,800 meters, making it one of the most sheer faces in the Alps. And it is Nordwand that has largely earned the Eiger its fearsome reputation within the mountaineering community, as at the time of making this video, since the year 1935, there have been 64 confirmed deaths on the face, which has also earned the Nordwand its infamous nickname, Mordwand, a play on words which, when translated from German, means murder wall. And true to its dubious reputation, despite being the most sought-after and attempted ascent route, the much less popular Mittelegi route was actually successfully ascended first in 1921. A successful ascent of Nordwand wouldn't be achieved until 17 years later in 1938, just a few days short of 80 years removed from the first successful summit ascent of the Eiger. After years of failed attempts to climb Nordwand, including a period which the Bernese government banned summit attempts from the face entirely, Nordwand had earned a reputation as an unclimbable face, with the ambitious 1938 summit team marking one of the first major breakthroughs in the sport of understanding what could successfully be accomplished and the limit of human ambition. Following this impressive first ascent of the face, Nordwand has continued to maintain its fearsome reputation, and a successful ascent of the face is an obvious testament to a climber's skill level, as it has become a staple summit for mountaineers wishing to ascend to high-level mountaineering to cross off their lists. If you're a frequent viewer of my channel, you likely have heard me mention ascents of Nordwand before, such as with Alison Hargraves, who completed an ascent of Nordwand while 6 months pregnant with her son, Tom Ballard. And Tom, too, would later map out and complete one of the hardest routes up Eiger's north face himself. Of course, there's also Uli Steck, who would set the speed record several times for the fastest ascent of the intimidating Nordwand, completing an ascent of the face at a blistering pace of just 2 hours and 22 minutes. My reasons for mentioning the aforementioned trio are twofold. As, well, obviously, if these stories sound interesting to you, I suggest you most definitely check out my videos about them. But also, secondly, to stress that while Alison, Tom, and Uli may have made their ascents of Nordwand look like a simple, straightforward climb, it is truly just a testament to to the elite level that the three had reached as mountaineers, as ascending Nordwand is no easy task, and it is a near unanimous agreement within the mountaineering community that climbing Nordwand should by no means be attempted by inexperienced climbers. Well, except perhaps by American actor and film director Clint Eastwood, that is. Clint Eastwood is an actor who is known for his gritty roles in Western films in his early career, and for his portrayal of various pissed off and jaded old guys later in his career. In late 1973, Clint was nearing the completion of his contract with Universal Pictures, and after they had given him directorial control over two projects in 1971 and earlier in 1973, as a result of how he felt that Universal had handled the projects, he had grown unhappy with Universal and sought to jump ship to their competitor, Warner Brothers, and Clint only had one more film left on his contract until he would be able to do so. Over the preceding year, Universal had begun work on a film adaptation of a mountaineering-based spy novel, The Eiger Sanction. However, film screenwriters had many issues with the novel's plot and rewrote vast sections of the story to better fit a film narrative, a process which took until 1973. Initially, actor and salad dressing mogul Paul Newman was cast as the film's leading character, but after Newman had read through the script, he found the film's contents to be too edgy for his liking and opted out of the role, which was then subsequently offered to Eastwood in late 1973. Although he had been primarily known for his acting in Western movies up until this point, Clint pounced at the opportunity to play the role of the leading character and was also given directorial control over the project as well. True to the tough, gritty characters that he was often cast as, Clint insisted that the film be shot on location rather than on set in a studio, something that hadn't really been attempted in Hollywood filmmaking yet up until this point, at least as far as filming on mountains goes. Furthermore, Clint also insisted that he would do his own stunts for the film himself, danger and difficulty be damned, and Universal was on board with the plan, and so work on the film began immediately, with Clint insisting that the script be reworked again to remove the alleged patronizing tone of the writings that he had been originally provided. After some reworks, Eastwood still wasn't entirely satisfied with the script, but he was confident that the action sequences in the film would surely compensate for the plot's weaknesses, and so he set to work compiling a small filming team and the at the time cutting-edge technology such as a battery-operated camera that were necessary to bring his vision for the film to life. As his writing team was working on the script reworks, he hired climber and mountaineer Mike Hoover, who had released a documentary about rock climbing in Yosemite titled Solo that Eastwood had personally enjoyed, and Mike set to work training Clint in preparation for the film shoot. Filming for the Eiger Sanction began in late July of 1974, first in the Monument Valley on the border of Arizona and Utah, where he shot a scene atop the totem pole, which is a sacred landmark for the native Navajo people. Notably, however, he did receive permission to film this scene from tribal authorities after brokering a deal with them to have a team of climbers ascend to the peak and remove pitons and other climbing equipment from the rocks, a promise which the team would make good on. After completing filming in the Monument Valley, Eastwood and his film crew traveled to Switzerland, where he was joined by two other notable mountaineers to assist with the filming process. A Scottish mountaineer named Dougal Haston, who was a frequent member of many of mountaineering legend Chris Bonington's expedition teams, who joined the film crew in an advisory role, and by a British mountaineer named David Knowles, who would be directly assisting the crew with operations and camera work while shooting. Principal filming for the Eiger Sanction began on August 12, 1974. As the film's director, as well as the protagonist, Clint decided that the best way to go about filming was to complete the most potentially dangerous scenes in the first few days of filming. As he reasoned, an accident was less likely during these first few days of filming since the crew would be the least fatigued early on in the shoot. And following the first day of filming, this plan was seemingly working, as filming on the 12th had gone off without a hitch. The next day, on August 13th, the team continued shooting the most dangerous scenes they'd need for the film, and by the late afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, they had just finished shooting a scene where climbers are barraged by a rock slide from above. As the film crew was breaking down their equipment before a helicopter was called to retrieve them, Mike Hoover mentioned that they had not shot footage of the rock slide from below yet, which they had intended to do. And so, Mike Hoover and David Knowles rappelled to a ledge below to shoot the footage. The duo managed to record the needed footage for the scene and were packing up their equipment when a huge boulder above the pair that had been jostled loose by the controlled rock slides broke free and hurtled towards the men on the ledge. The boulder directly struck David, crushing him beneath its enormous weight, killing him, and had also badly injured Mike, fracturing his pelvis and covering his body in deep muscle bruising. Following David's death, further shooting for the film was put on hold, as the film crew held a small wake for David. After laying David to rest, Clint began to reconsider completing the film and debated canceling it. However, Mike Hoover and the other climbers on the team insisted that production continue on. They reasoned with Eastwood that David was a mountaineer, and thus was aware of the risks he would face during the filming process while on the mountain, which, as frequent viewers of my mountaineering content can attest, is a common sentiment held amongst mountaineers. They reasoned further that if the film was not released, that David's death would ultimately be meaningless, and so Clint relented to their pleas, and filming for the movie again began. However, the rest of the shooting process for the film was not without further incident either, as longtime Eastwood cameraman Frank Stanley was badly injured after a fall that left him wheelchair-bound for quite some time, an accident he blamed on Eastwood, stating, quote, "Clint Eastwood is a very impatient man who doesn't really plan his pictures or do any homework," Stanley said. After 5 weeks of on-location filming at the Eiger, the team finished filming the rest of the needed scenes in the city of Zurich and further climbing scenes in Zion National Park, where Clint would impress the climbers in Utah with his ability and stamina while climbing. The film was wrapped in late September of 1974 and entered final production before its release in theaters on May 21st, 1975. Upon the film's release, it was met with a lukewarm reception from critics, who criticized the plot and story of the film, but praised the action sequences for their intensity and authenticity. The late, great movie critic Roger Ebert wrote in his review, quote, "It has a plot so unlikely and confused that we can't believe it for much more than 15 seconds at a time, but its action sequences are so absorbing and its mountaintop photography so compelling that we don't care. And so we get wrapped up in the situations, and we're seduced by the photography, and we enjoy the several pretty girls who happen along in the hero's path, and if the plot doesn't make any sense, well, no movie's perfect," he said in his 3 of 4-star review of the film. Ultimately, the Eiger Sanction was a box office success, turning a profit of $5 million, although it has faded into obscurity in the eye of the public over the years, an oft-overlooked film in Clint Eastwood's extensive filmography. However, for Eastwood and the rest of the team that had worked on the film, the tragic death of David Knowles and the immense effort poured into the project surely have made it one of the most unforgettable experiences during their times in the film industry. Thank you all for watching.